The first thing that made me question what was happening wasn't the storm. It wasn't the darkness. It wasn't even the fact that I hadn't seen another vehicle in nearly 2 hours. It was a voice that shouldn't have been there. To understand why that moment has stayed with me for years, you need to picture the situation exactly as it was. Imagine being alone on a highway so isolated that the road seems to disappear into an endless wall of snow. Imagine driving through conditions that force you to focus on every inch of pavement ahead. The kind of night where your headlights don't illuminate the road so much as reveal fragments of it before they vanish back into white. The kind of night where the weather seems to swallow sound. No traffic, no towns, no gas stations, no signs of life. Just a truck, a storm, and miles of frozen wilderness. I remember gripping the steering wheel and watching the snow race through the beams of my headlights. The wind was hitting the side of the trailer, hard enough to make the entire rig shudder. Every few minutes I glanced at the mirrors. Nothing. Just darkness. The CB radio had been mostly silent all evening. A few scattered conversations earlier in the route. Nothing unusual, nothing memorable. Then, without warning, the speaker crackled. That partial transmission hung in the cab, like an unanswered question. "Please don't leave me out here." The words replayed in my mind as I kept the truck steady at a cautious speed. Wipers fighting a losing battle against the thickening snow. I had been hauling a load of industrial equipment across one of the most remote mountain passes in the region, a route I'd run dozens of times before. Familiarity was supposed to be my comfort. Tonight it felt different. I pressed the microphone again. "Driver, identify yourself. What's your position?" Static answered first, then faded. I scanned the dashboard instruments. Engine temperature, normal. Brakes holding. GPS showing steady progress toward the next checkpoint town, still hours away. The clock read just past midnight. Outside, the world had shrunk to the narrow cone of my headlights. Minutes stretched. Then the radio came alive a second time. "I can see your headlights." The voice was clearer now, worn thin by exhaustion, each word shaped by someone pushing through pain or cold or both. My eyes flicked to the mirrors, then the shoulders, then ahead. Emptiness in every direction. No taillights, no flashers, no silhouette of a stranded rig or a figure waving. Just the highway carving through drifts that grew taller by the mile. I responded immediately. "Where are you? Do you need roadside assistance? I can call it in." The reply didn't come as expected. Instead, "You already passed me." The transmission dropped. That line lodged somewhere deep. How could he claim I'd passed him? I'd been watching the road like a hawk. Every reflector post and mile marker a point of focus. No vehicle, no person, nothing out of place. Yet the voice carried a certainty that didn't match the facts I could see. I told myself signals bounce strangely in storms like this, maybe off the mountains, maybe from a truck miles back or ahead. Logical, reasonable. The road had taught me that. But doubt crept in anyway. I replayed the tone. Not frantic screaming, but a quiet, bone-deep weariness. The kind you hear from people who've been waiting too long in the cold. I checked my mirrors once more. Still nothing. The snow now fell so heavily, it created the illusion of driving through a tunnel of white noise. The rig shuddered again under a powerful gust, and for the first time in years, the isolation pressed a little closer. The miles rolled on, but the silence on the radio felt loaded. I reached for my thermos of coffee, the liquid barely warm now, and took a sip while keeping one hand on the wheel. Routine actions to anchor myself. Then the crackle returned. "You kept going." The same voice, picking up as if we'd never stopped talking. Disappointment colored the words, subtle but unmistakable. "You weren't supposed to keep going." I keyed the mic fast. "Who is this? Identify your handle or company." He ignored the question, and began listing specifics about my route that no stranger should know. The exact mountain pass I'd crested at dusk, the small rest area where I'd pulled in for coffee and a quick stretch, noting the single other truck there with Nevada plates. Even the detour I'd taken hours earlier around construction on a lower stretch. Details I'd handled alone, without broadcasting them. My stomach tightened. "How do you know that?" I asked. No answer about his location. Instead, a new question. "Do you remember the bridge?" "Which bridge?" This route had bridges over rivers, ravines, and rail lines, too many to guess. The voice faded again into static and wind noise, as if the speaker stood exposed somewhere out in the blizzard. Breathing came through, faintly, labored and slow, the sound of someone conserving energy against freezing temperatures. I glanced at the fuel gauge, still comfortable, and the odometer. I'd covered good distance since the first transmission, yet the voice followed without effort. No headlights in my mirrors, no signs of pursuit. The highway remained a blank canvas of snow. Every logical explanation I built crumbled under the weight of those personal details. Who watches a truck that closely without being visible? The storm intensified. Reflector posts vanished for long stretches. No snowplows, no other traffic. Just me and the voice that knew too much. I felt the first real pull of unease. Not panic, but the focused alertness that keeps a driver alive on bad nights. Something was off in a way. Years on the road couldn't easily dismiss. Time blurred as I continued forward. The voice returned in fragments. Each time it described something new. The color of my trailer tarps. The slight rattle in my fifth-wheel hitch I'd meant to fix at the last yard. Even the song that had played on my satellite radio an hour earlier. Tiny, private observations stitched together into a picture that made no sense. "What do you want me to do?" I finally asked, voice steady but firm. "If you're out there, give me coordinates, landmarks, anything." The reply was softer. "Turn around, you missed it." Then breathing, wind, and silence. I weighed the options. Turning an 80,000-pound rig on a narrow, snow-covered mountain highway in zero visibility wasn't just risky. It could be catastrophic. Jackknife, slide off into a drift or worse. Help might not arrive for hours, yet the voice painted a picture of someone stranded behind me. Exposed, waiting precisely for my lights to appear again. I slowed the truck slightly, scanning for any safe pull-off. The road offered none. Shoulders dropped away into uncertain terrain. I thought about the morning after. Authorities finding a vehicle buried in snow. A driver who didn't make it because no one stopped. The image lingered, but I kept going. Not out of callousness, but because every instinct honed by the roads and forward was survival. The voice grew quieter in subsequent transmissions, more resigned. It described waiting by the side of the road, watching my lights recede, the cold settling deeper. Details that painted isolation so vivid I could almost feel it myself. Hours deeper into the night, the GPS showed the approach to a major bridge spanning a deep gorge, the one the voice had mentioned earlier. Snow had reduced visibility to near nothing, but I knew the structure. Long, high, with metal guardrails and warning signs. As my headlights picked up the start of the span, the radio crackled one last time. "You remember the bridge now." The voice carried a strange calm. "I waited there. You passed right by." I eased off the throttle, the rig slowing as I crossed. Wind howled louder over the open expanse. Halfway across, something in my peripheral vision caught, perhaps just a trick of swirling snow. But I held course. No stopping on a bridge like this. On the far side, the road descended into another stretch of wilderness. The voice didn't return. Silence stretched for the remaining miles until I reached the next town as dawn broke, gray and cold. I reported the transmissions to local authorities and the company dispatcher. They checked records. No distress calls, no stranded vehicles reported on that stretch that night. Searches turned up nothing. Years later, the details still surface on long drives. The voice that knew my route, my stops, my truck. The way it spoke as if I'd overlooked something critical in the storm. I never learned who it was or what really happened out there on that frozen highway. But every time snow falls heavy and the road empties, I listen a little closer to the radio. Some nights the wilderness holds its stories close, and drivers like me simply pass through them, carrying questions that never quite resolve. If this story kept you watching until the very end, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more true horror stories and disturbing mysteries.